So I'm sure most of you are well familiar with the thing we refer to as the layering system, layering clothing systems. And fundamentally, the first and most important layer is what a lot of commonly referred to as the base layer, or the next to skin layer. The primary purpose of the next to skin layer is actually to move sweat and perspiration that's generated at the skin level outward to that clothing layer, where it can be, by being moved away from your skin, we reduce the amount of evaporative cooling that actually takes place at the skin level. The foremost important thing to remember about all apparel choices are what I call the four F's. The first one is, what is the function that this apparel has to perform? 2, what is the fabric choice that allows and helps aid in that function of that garment? The third thing is the fit of a garment. And the fourth thing is the features. And then, of course, the last thing would be, can you afford it? Can you buy it? So, in the case of base layer garments, the purpose, that of moving moisture away from your skin and providing the first dead air layer next to your skin, the fabric's choice here needs to be synthetics. Either polyester is basically the king of most of the long underwear appropriate base layer clothing is built out of some form of polyester in varying degrees of thicknesses and different kinds of weaves. Other synthetic materials have also been utilized, nylons and also polypropylene. The fabric polypropylene actually kind of pioneered this entire category clear back in the 70s and 80s. But by about 1980, polyester kind of took over, and so for the last 40 plus years, polyester long underwear has dominated. In the last 20 so years, a new high-tech fabric has emerged, which we refer to as merino wool. Merino wool is a microfiber wool. It's very, very soft, very, very thin, very fine. It's a particular species of sheep. The fiber size is very, very tiny, and you can weave wool garments out of it that are very soft, very comfortable. They actually can hold up pretty well to machine washing and drying. And so wool has reemerged in the last couple decades as an alternative to the polyesters. Basically, the polyester materials are quicker drying and more durable and stronger, longer lasting, and less expensive. The wool materials generally are a little bit more expensive. They are a little bit slower to dry, and they also are not quite as durable. But one of the chief things that wool does is it manages body odor much better than the polyester materials. They frequently get pretty stinky after just a day or two of use, whereas the merino wool manages, through the construction of the material itself, manages body odor better. So if you're going to do lots of outdoor stuff, winter camping, you can make the investment. I highly recommend merino wool. For most of the scouts, we're probably looking at some sort of polyester underwear. So the first purpose, move moisture away from your skin. The fabric choice, merino wool or polyester. Let's talk now about fit for just a second. Fit really should be fairly snug, close. You don't want it to be restrictive and uncomfortable, but you want it to be pretty snug and close next to your skin, able to literally move that moisture outward through the type of fabric that's being utilized. Now let's look at features and the types of thicknesses and materials that are going to be typically offered. Starting right off with underwear, if you're a person that does wear underwear, you defeat the whole purpose of this if you wear your cotton underwear or your cotton t-shirts. And so polyester materials are available in briefs. Those of you that get particularly cold, there's even wind paneled versions. There's panels of this polyester underwear with a windproof panel built into the crotch area. You can certainly get it in boxer configurations, brief configurations, as I've shown, and t-shirts. These are polyester t-shirts. Don't necessarily have to have fancy outdoor base layers. You may already have from your sporting team experiences playing soccer or football or other sports. Under Armour is a brand very common. Just make sure when you're checking the label of your Under Armour clothing, make sure that you're buying the synthetic Under Armour products. So this is just an example of a polyester t-shirt that was made for an event. This would work as a base layer. This is just a pair of running tights There are synthetic running tights. They could be used as base layers as well. When you get into the different long underwear base layer things coming out, especially outdoor stores, they generally are classified in 3 weights. They typically use words like lightweight, silk weight. Those are the thinnest weights. Then they'll sometimes have weights that they refer to as mid weights, and then they'll go into the heaviest or thickest of these long underwear materials will be called expedition weight or thermal weight or whatever. I recommend for multi-purpose use you look at the thinnest layers of long underwear because those are useful year-round. They're useful for summer hiking and backpacking, running, bicycling, those type of activities. That you have at least a bottom and a top. Now, in terms of features to look for, they commonly have things like crew necks, and that's sort of the most common configuration. And if that's all that you can afford or find or it's available, that's certainly fine to have a crew neck. A lot more popular with people often, though, is some sort of a zippered turtleneck, because you can open it up and get greater ventilation, or you can zip it up and of course you get more insulation around your neck, which is a hard place to insulate. My personal favorite, however, I discovered about 4 or 5 years ago, is using hoodies. Having a hood on my base layer allows me to quickly throw up the hood, trap some heat. If I need to get rid of heat, dump heat, and regulate heat better, I can just pull the hood back. So I find having a hood on my base layer very, very useful. And this is an example of a base layer in merino wool, and this is an example of a base layer in a polyester blend. What I'm modeling and wearing is a sun hoodie. And this is a 100% polyester sun hoodie, meant obviously for things like fishing in Florida and the Keys, bone fishing down on the flats where they just get cooked by the sun. Makes an excellent base layer because it's out of the correct fabric, polyester. There are certain features that are fun to have, or in this case it has thumb loops. And thumb loops allows it to protect the back of your hand, and when you're shoving it into gloves and mittens, you don't have your sleeve riding up. Now, you don't have to necessarily get a thumb loop with a nice loop like that. You can simply add a little piece of elastic. And this could certainly be added by somebody who's handy to give yourself some sort of a thumb loop scenario. I find this is not a feature you have to have, but a feature that's handy in your base layers is to have pockets. This has a little pocket, which is a great place to stash sunscreen or to stash a power bar. I wouldn't make the decision about buying a base layer on whether it had these kind of features, but it certainly enhances the performance for me. Bottoms are generally in those same weights, lightweight, midweight, and heavyweight. If I'm buying it for multi-sport use, I'm going to buy the thinnest, lightest base layer bottom I can. If I was buying it specifically, though, for winter camping, I tend to look for the midweight long underwear because it's the kind of weight that I typically would not wear as I'm doing the snowshoe into the campsite and I'm doing all the exertion of building the snow cave or the igloo or whatever I'm doing, those camp chores. I probably wouldn't even be wearing it. Once all of those chores were done for the day, I would change into this mid-weight bottom. Gives me a little bit more warmth. I feel that the really thick long underwear, like an example like this where it has even this grid pattern, is just too overkill in an underwear application. I use this more as a mid-weight layering product, so I tend to stay away from the really thick long underwear bottoms. So hopefully this gives you a little bit idea about your base layers. Remember the function of it, the fabric it needs to be out of, polyester, merino wool, the fit, comfortable, close to your skin, and then appropriate features as you choose, whether that's a crew neck, a zip neck, a hood, and whether you can find it with pockets. One of the more recent discoveries I've made about base layers actually comes from the hunting industry. There's a company called Kohagen that makes long underwear with full side zips. And so what I've discovered is I could drop my various outer pants if I chose, And because the long underwear has a full side zipper, I can actually choose to remove it without even getting undressed. So don't worry, I have tights on underneath for modesty. I can completely remove my long underwear layer without even getting undressed. So if I was in a situation where I was overheating, or I could actually install it in reverse. I could completely put it on if I was feeling a little bit too cold and I needed to add long underwear. They're not very inexpensive, but I share it with you because it's an idea that somebody who's handy could go ahead and add side zips to their long underwear bottoms. And I have found that using it incredibly versatile. And if you use a small enough zipper, you don't feel it, you don't notice the zipper. So just a real small, skinny coil separating zipper. I find that a great addition, being able to add my long underwear base layer at will.